How's that?
Well, we ain't spinning it yet. That you can get involved in that when we get going. All righty. We ready? All right. All right. I'd like to call to order the work session on addressing blight. And I'm just going to open the floor right up to our Community Development Director, Ms. Jamie Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of the council, and to the public that is with us here in person and also maybe listening to the presentation. For those of you at home listening, the presentation I'm about to go through is online on our Suite One Media site, and I'll try to remember to sort of let you know that I'm advancing slides in the virtual sphere there. We have been trying to get on the docket a presentation and work session on blight and really addressing blight in our city. My goal for this presentation tonight is to help everyone understand a little bit about the different types of blight. That can be a broad term. To help you understand that we have blighted, vacant, and abandoned properties in both the residential uses as well as commercial uses, to try to help you understand what tools we currently have and what actions we currently take to address blight, and then maybe have a couple of ideas for what we might want to do moving forward. So that's kind of the arc of this evening's presentation. Just to kind of lay the groundwork a little bit, you'll remember, I think it was in January, one of my last master plan quarterly updates. We kind of went over the master plan. Again, it was written in 2017. We talked about a few items in our community work plan. If you'll remember, we sort of praised our accomplishments over roughly the past 10 years. And then we thought about some of the things that we didn't take any action on in the community work program. And the idea was maybe there were some items that we just wanted to let go, that we weren't really interested in addressing any longer. And maybe there were some items that we wanted to keep. So if you'll remember, one of the action items out of our 2017 master plan was to implement a blight tax on properties to encourage compliance with property maintenance standards. It was something that we ranked as wanting to achieve in the immediate short term, but we didn't take any action on it. And then also, if you'll remember, we put out a survey in which we asked residents to go in and any of our work plan items that we did not address, we asked them to rank them. And in the priorities identified in that public survey, oh, sorry, I tried to add an animation, but it didn't work. So we'll move on from there. Some of the things that came up, particularly in the realms of economic development and land use, again on that 2017 work plan that we all worked so hard on, was a couple of things: to incentivize the reuse or redevelopment of existing commercial and/or industrial buildings over the development of new properties. To create a plan to revitalize Midtown. Well, I'm happy to say that that plan is currently underway with the University of Georgia Carl Vinson Institute and the Midtown RSVP. And then within the land use category, to implement a blight tax on properties to encourage compliance with property maintenance standards. To drive this home even further, as part of the Midtown RSVP process, about 1,200 of our community members took a survey. Many of you, I'm sure, did it. And one of the things that came up in the presentation or in the survey data that residents and others that visit St. Mary's did not like was blighted, dilapidated, and vacant buildings in the Midtown area. So I propose now is the time that we can start taking some action on a goal that we set out to do in 2017. I think now is the time to start moving the needle a little bit on this one. So what do we currently do? So I know that we may think of some key structures in Midtown that when we talk about blight that come to mind, but I really wanted to take the time to sing the praises of our fantastic code compliance officers who are with us this evening, Carlos and Troy. give them a shout out for all their really great work, and wanted to walk through kind of these 4 large areas that code compliance spends a lot of their time on. So, overgrown vegetation, grass, and weeds. This is one, as a recent transplant to the southeast, I am amazed at how voracious the environment can be in terms of growth and growing. And I know that for our household, it was a real transition to think, oh, we're going to have to mow the grass like every week. But this is a common thing that Troy and Carlos will get calls about, whether it's residential or commercial property. And we're always out trying to remind residents and commercial property owners to keep their lawns maintained. Another area which the Code Compliance Department spent a significant amount of time on until recently, thank you, Mr. Williams, for your hard work, on transitioning our bulk trash pickups. So Ms. Shin, who is a great record keeper, I believe the Code Compliance Department called in 3,000 bulk pickups last year. So not everybody was calling them in, but the good work of the Code Compliance Department ensured that, that we could, we were able to keep that trash off of our streets. Because nothing kind of, sings a little bit of blight is when you have trash that is not being picked up. So for those of you who do not know, we have now transitioned our bulk pickup to residents, those who have the pickup service, can put out their bulk at the times of their regular trash pickup. So no calling in is needed. And with that transition, what the Code Compliance Department, which is, to be clear, 1.5 full-time employees, okay, so 1.5 employees, has now been able to free up their time to work on what I would call more strategic, comprehensive efforts. And we've done a really successful operation around inoperable vehicles. So our ordinance does regulate inoperable or unregistered vehicles. And so what we've focused on is a neighborhood scale assessment in which we follow our approach within code, which is to speak to a property owner one-on-one, try to get them into compliance, make them aware of what is non-compliant. After a certain amount of time, we transition to a more formal written notice of violation with a corrective order and a certain amount of time. If we still cannot move the needle towards compliance with that, we will issue a summons to that individual to appear in municipal court. At that point, it's kind of out of code's hands, and it has now moved into the municipal court system. So what we've been able to do with inoperable vehicles, and this was a 4-month process, so I just want to kind of put this into a time frame. A 4-month process in which in one neighborhood we identified 22 residencies, which with about 32 inoperable vehicles in total. And over the 4-month period, this effort has resulted in only 2 summonses. So 29 inoperable vehicles were either fixed up or towed away or moved on, but are no longer sitting on properties inoperable. I think that was a really fantastic achievement in the Code Compliance Department, and with more time now, not having to go around and call in the bulk pickups, they have the time to do these very comprehensive strategic approaches. So that last kind of doodle there of vacant and abandoned properties, again, I have to stress that this is both in residential and in commercial areas. So what we're talking about here is really, these are property owners who are no longer within the city. They don't have eyes on their property. There's no activity in the property. And what ends up happening there, and this is a question that I pose to you as council members and mayor and the public, is that code compliance then enters into this realm of property management. We have property owners who are essentially shirking their private property management and ownership responsibilities. And it's code compliance that is calling them, reminding them about weeds and grass, communicating with the police department when there's illegal activity, mobile vendors that don't have permits, folks who are squatting, illegal sales of things in the parking lot. There's all manner of things that code will spend a significant amount of time on. And this is such a problem throughout the country, really, but a little bit more locally. Both the cities of Savannah as well as Brunswick have done studies in which they've identified that, on average, each vacant or blighted or abandoned property will cost a municipality and its taxpayers anywhere from $1,300 to $1,500 a property. And these funds are largely unrecoverable costs that are incurred for addressing overgrown grass, litter, illegal dumping, inoperable vehicles, you name it. So the code compliance staff and I have really zoomed in on a couple of properties that are just persistently challenging, right? It's where to the tune of 3 years, we've been calling property owners, asking them to mow their grass. That time is up. So those property owners are now in the process of receiving summonses. So I think where we are now is just at a point where we need to start taking some more significant action. So let's talk a little bit. Any questions before I keep going here? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the toolbox. What do we have in the toolbox to address this challenge? So currently, I mean, we've got incredible code compliance officers and staff, and we work great as a team. We have a series of ordinances, particularly Chapter 46 in our Code of Ordinances is related to the environment. There are certain articles in there that are related to nuisances and to nuisance abatement. We do also have a foreclosure and vacant real estate property registry that is on the books. We have adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, and we can also take some steps on enforcing that code because we have adopted it in our ordinances. But some of the things, I think, is that, yeah, there's another animation that didn't work. Some of the things that we don't have are those last 2 bullets. So this idea of a community redevelopment tax incentive program, AKA a blight tax. Okay, that's something that we don't have, which if we wanted to pursue that avenue, we would have to codify that. Some others can be things that are less punitive, if you will. Maybe potentially some small grants, maybe a zoning overlay that would really augment the allowed uses, perhaps in our commercial corridor or in Midtown, so that you would lighten the lift to get development in those areas. So there's a bunch of different tools that we can use. And tonight I just want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into this Community Redevelopment Tax Incentive Program, otherwise known as the Blight Tax. So where do we turn? We turn to our good friends at the University of Georgia Carl Vinson Institute. And I found this presentation, which is fairly new, and it goes through some of the requirements to get a blight tax or this type of redevelopment tax incentive program going in your city. Okay? So what allows us to do this? I know there was some confusion around whether or not we as a city could implement a blight tax. And so the Georgia Constitution, this section that I have here cited for you, in 2002, allows localities to establish tax incentive programs to rehabilitate blighted properties. Some of the arguments for it is that it decreases the burden on the government, exactly as I said, about code compliance staff, time to the tune of $1,300 to $1,500 per blighted property, and it encourages private property owners to maintain their property. Okay. What kinds of properties? I want to be very, very, very clear here. This does not apply to residential structures that are individuals' or families' private residencies. Again, this does not apply to a primary residence. Okay, just want to be real clear on that. So residential structures that are vacant, or maybe they're being used for something other than a residential dwelling. It applies to blighted or abandoned commercial or industrial structures. It can apply to brownfields, so we don't really have those in the city. But this does not really apply to undeveloped land. If you have a tract of land that's undeveloped, this is not a tool that you would want to use. What are the necessary elements? So you need to come up with a definition in your ordinance of what the standards of blight are and how you determine something to be blighted. This is incredibly important because you need to have very clear guidance so that everyone can understand what we mean when we say blight. In addition to why that's very important is because to really do this procedure correctly, and not all municipalities do this. Councilmember Nascimento invited folks from the planning director and also, I believe, a alderman or a council member from Brunswick. Yep.
Yes,
And Councilmember Keene joined us in that meeting, and we had a conversation about their blight tax. And that's something that the property owners just get a tax bill. There's no public hearing process in that. The best practice is to identify this procedure. When you're identifying blighted properties, it requires a notice to the owner and an opportunity for a public hearing. And then you have to come up with standards for the rehabilitation of that property. The way that this kind of works is, you establish that a property is blighted. We as a municipality determine an extra ad valorem tax that we would place on that property. I'll get into that a little bit further in the presentation. But in that communication, the property owner is then given a bit of a corrective order. What do you need to do in order to get your property out of this blighted status? And once that property is brought out of its blighted status, then that property owner that invested in that property could enjoy a reduced ad valorem tax. So there's a couple of ways to do this, kind of carrot and stick, and that's what I wanted to lay out to the council now. So really important to make sure that we get, what do we mean when we say blighted, right? We need to be very clear about that. We need to identify the procedure that we want to adopt for identifying such properties. And then we want to identify the standards for rehabilitation. Okay. Furthermore, when you go to levy this ad valorem tax and its revenue, we need to be very clear about the increased rate. So if you start to look into, even further in this presentation that we've cribbed from, when you really look into this, the consensus from other cities that have done it is you need to make it stick. You need to make it work. So it can't just be a doubling of your ad valorem tax. Most municipalities who have enacted this are anywhere of 5 times the ad valorem tax, all the way up to 10 times the ad valorem tax. So the community that we spoke to in Brunswick, they did 7 times. Okay? You got to specify the decreased rate of tax after rehabilitation. So then often what happens is that there's a 0.5 millage rate reduction after the property is brought into compliance. So it's sort of a tool to, you're levying a higher tax while the property is blighted, and in trying to get it out of blight, you're offering this carrot at the end that there will be a reduction in taxes. And then good practice is to separate those revenues that we would get from this taxation and could be used or go towards community development. And we would have to identify what we thought those uses might be. Okay, so I think that's kind of where I wanted to end this work session, to put forth this idea to help you understand what we're currently doing, some of the actions that we're taking, but we can only take certain actions so far. So this is one potential that we could pursue. Particularly, I think the focus, if we should decide to do this, is really on vacant, abandoned properties. These properties in which code compliance has now become the de facto property management company. And I think we can get there through a few tweaks. So again, that Chapter 46, the environment section of our Code of Ordinances, there are really 3 existing ordinances in there. Again, the one on nuisances, the one on nuisance abatement, and the foreclosure and vacant real property registry. I think those are 3 existing tools that with a few tweaks, we can get them to have a bit more teeth to them. And then if the council would choose to, staff, I believe it would be smart if we worked with our legal counsel to try to draft a community redevelopment tax incentive program. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. So with that, I'll end and take any questions.
I want to first say, Ms. Stein, you and your department don't toot your horn enough sometimes. Ms. Stein has on her wall in her office a a number of photos of properties that were previously blighted that they have worked with very quietly to clean up. So they have been at this work for some time now with some good successes. They're sometimes slow processes and working with people, but she's shown a vested interest in doing what she's talking about here. And it's not just ideation, it's impact, and it's occurring. And the biggest thing, and the thing that I've spoken to her about, and that I would like for us as a council to understand and to act on as a group, is to understand that we have to stand behind what we're asking our staff to do. Yep. And when our buddy from church or our coworker has a situation where their property has been identified as blighted, and then next thing you know, we're trying to work in the backgrounds to get this alleviated for them or whatever, that needs to not happen. We need to stand on the principles of what we're asking them to do day in, out, the tough, hard work, the hard conversations, and we need to stand behind them, and we need to be, the backbone of this operation, and let it move forward in the way we decide we want it to move forward. And so I ask for that consideration as we move forward and talk about exactly what we're going to do and how we implement, that we do it with a intention to do it and to not back off of it once we start this process. And I have spoken a couple of times about my primary focus is one on commercial blight, and more of a, as Mr. Harris talked about, more of a community effort when it comes into our residential situations, especially primary residences of people, to try to find a way to be more community oriented, to provide the helping hand. Perhaps some of these funds, if we're able to actually collect funds through the blight tax, could be set aside to help with those kinds of situations when they arise, as one possible thing that we could do with those funds. Would be to help out in those situations where we need. But the big work, like you said, is deciding we're ready to move forward on this. Like I said, it's not easy just because you have a tax that you can levy on somebody. Everything I've read, as she said, it needs to be painful. 7 to 10 times or whatever that number is. It needs to something that wakes them up and realizes that this is going to start this empty property that I've left here and let become an eyesore because I live in Jacksonville or Texas or wherever, and I don't really care. I don't drive by it every day. It needs to pique their attention, that the city's serious about this. But you go through that process, you apply these. If they don't pay it, now you're into liens and other legal issues. It doesn't fix the problem overnight. We all have to realize that, but we want to offer both that carrot, you did fix up something that has been blighted for some time or whatever, and we're willing to meet you and give you a little benefit for doing that work to make our city look better. But that the stick is very important as well, because it's got to motivate people to do this in the first place. Many of the communities that have implemented these things come to find out that they don't necessarily have to go down this road too often with the legal stick, because the fact that it's out there and you do it once or twice and they know you're serious about it, it starts to take hold, and then you start to get the intended desired effect as you move forward. So those are my comments to start. So.
Jamie, you have one of the toughest jobs around, and it reflects on us whether you're doing a good job or not, because like the mayor said, people will catch you in Sunday school or Walmart or even at at a dinner and come up and said, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years. This is my property, and they want me to do this or do that. And we're going to have to get some backbone as elected official and say, look, that's the law. You're going to have to abide by it. And I respect and love what you're doing, and keep up the good work.
I was going to save this for comments, but it's more relevant now. I think as citizens, this is the one tax that you should get excited about. You say, who's excited about tax? Well, I'm excited about this tax because some of the issues before even coming on to council are going to be addressed with just this one tool. I was so surprised to hear Councilman Lance and the city planner of Brunswick was using 7 times their ad valorem. Is that the max?
No.
Okay, but they, I mean, number one, that was revenue for their city if they weren't complying. But two, this is the beautification that St. Mary citizens have been asking for. And I don't want to see in 3 to 5 years people having to tell their loved ones and family that comes to visit to close their eyes as they drive through Midtown so that we can get to the beauty of downtown. And this is a tool, as Ms. Stein pointed out, in our toolbox that would address those things. So yes, this is a tax I'm actually excited about, maybe the only tax I'm ever excited about. And as the mayor already said, I think this is something we can get on board with. And this is going to drive business into affordable commercial space. Some of these people have just, maybe they don't even live here and are just kind of using this as a way to park money. And having a new fun little tax bill is going to make that drive down the price and bring businesses into this empty commercial space. Because I hate driving through, let's just call it from the tracks to Burrell and seeing a bunch of empty buildings. And this is going to incentivize them to want to have tenants move in there, want to upkeep their property, and you're going to start seeing businesses pour into what was otherwise vacant. And so I think this is a great tool. And yes, I couldn't agree with the mayor more. Thank you so much, Ms. Stein, for what you do already and for what your team has done and in all this preparation. But this is something I think that this is a long time coming, so thank you.
In this presentation that Ms. Stein referenced, it says no limits on increased or decreased millage rates. So 10 is not necessarily the ceiling.
Not out of the question. And I mean, thank you very much for recognizing how hard we've been working, but it's a good team. I've got exceptional staff.
I was going to just have a few comments. Obviously, this was identified in 2017, I believe you said, and hasn't been implemented. So it's obviously long overdue, and it is something we should be excited about because it is the next step for the, revitalizing St. Mary's. I know you're you just got to this point, and we have a lot to discuss moving forward. But is there like a standard, like say, if you have a blighted property and you got a big tax bill coming, you decide to sell it and someone else buys it. Is there like now a reset button for the new owner, like a year, 2 years until the tax would come in? Is that a normal?
I really don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not certain
I know
about that.
we're just not getting
Yeah.
into this, but the way my mind
Couple of
works
good
is
questions,
ways to prevent a non-arm's length transaction where, well, shoot, I'm about to get a big tax bill, so I'm just going to sell it to my buddy and start the clock over, like just to make sure there's preventive measures for things like that.
Yeah, it's a good thing to look at. I don't know that answer.
I was just looking, I received from the city of Auburn, Georgia, a copy of their redevelopment tax incentive program, their blight tax. I was just looking to see if they addressed that specific question in there. I can't remember seeing it when I looked at it earlier, but definitely something that we could include.
Yeah, I mean, the city of Brunswick chose to put it all into their building ordinance. So it's a whopper. It's 75 pages long, I think. But I feel like the city of Auburn, is that what you said, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Brunswick, I know Savannah has one. And I think those are good next steps if there are some of these questions about, well, what happens if this? And to have some guidance on establishing our procedures, that's kind of the writing code 101 is go to what's been successful and take some ideas from it.
So this says should be served upon the person shown on the most recent tax digest of Berry Council as responsible for payment of ad valorem taxes assessed thereon. So,
Jamie, do we have any information from other cities about how they're defining blight?
Yeah, yeah. So in those ordinances, there's usually at the very beginning, there's a definition of blight. I mean, basically anything that can be detrimental to public health, so you can cast a really wide net. Anytime that there's a illicit activity or drug use or crime, we can utilize other definitions. But to be clear, this is not a missing shingle here or there. This
Right.
is
I've heard that
yeah.
lapse in utility service has been used.
Yep, I think that could be one. I mean, if you
Yeah.
haven't had a active utility account for 5 years, that's a pretty good
I'll read,
indication.
City
Or even
Auburn's.
shorter. Yeah.
I'll read the City of Auburn's for you real quick. It's not too long. Blighted property means any urbanized or developed property which presents two or more of the following conditions: uninhabitable, unsafe, or abandoned structure, inadequate provisions for ventilation, light, air, or sanitation, and imminent harm to life or other property caused by fire, flood, hurricane, tornado, earthquake, storm, or other natural catastrophe, respecting which the governor has declared a state of emergency under state law or has certified the need for disaster assistance under federal law, provided, however, this division shall not apply to property unless the relevant public agency has given notice in writing to the property owner regarding specific harm caused by the property owner has failed to take reasonable measures. A site identified by the EPA as a Superfund site, repeated illegal activity on the individual property of which the property owner knew or should have known, the presence of trash, rubbish, and/or graffiti, or the maintenance of the property is below state, county, or municipal codes for at least 1 year, and is conducive to ill health, transmission, disease, infant mortality, or crime in the immediate proximity of the property. Property shall not be deemed blighted solely because of aesthetic conditions. Now, that's theirs, so give you an idea of.
I think that's a powerful tool to
Yeah.
list, kind of like offer the menu. And you can choose from the
Yeah.
menu.
So, like I said, I guess next step is, if we're all on board, I think we need to green light,
Great.
Ms. Stein to start working with Mr. Blackerby and
Yep.
compiling some of these and put together what she thinks is serviceable, which her department can
Okay.
manage and administrate, and get it back to us for the full blessing and support.
Great. We'd be happy to do that.
I don't know that there's a
We
work
need a
session, I
motion.
don't guess we need a motion for that necessarily.
And
Can't vote on it
but I'd say
anyway.
a straw poll.
So-
I mean, if memory serves correctly, at our retreat this year, was this the number one thing that we had on our list? Or
It was in the top
Way
5
up
for
there.
It was
sure.
definitely top. It was
Yeah.
way up there.
So-
It came up
So
repeatedly.
I don't think we necessarily, I think it's on your radar already, and hopefully you've heard enough supporting
I have, thank you.
talk
Thank you very
talk
much.
here that want you to continue on, and we'll look forward to your presentation of an ordinance to consider.
Great.
I guess if you want to take a few minutes and ask if there's any comments or questions from the audience, we got about 20 minutes or so.
Ken Jelly, 102 Saltgrass Trace here in St. Mary's. Mr. Mayor, council members, Director Stein, I think this is an excellent initiative. Ordinance needs to be tough, really tough. The fact that you adopted the International Property Maintenance Code is, in my opinion, going to help significantly, because that book has so many little tiny items in it that you can tie those small, some people would consider them insignificant items. You can bundle that together and come up with a shopping bag full of problems that would fit right into the Blight ordinance. Have no mercy. We've been putting up with blighted facilities, properties, land, and We as a city collectively have been doing enormous things trying to get the problem solved. And landowners and property owners have thumbed their noses at us. Question came up as to, well, if a property has been fined and the ad valorem tax is high, the solution might be, well, let me just sell the property. The ordinance should say the property is not sellable. You cannot sell it while you have an ad valorem tax hanging over your head, period, bottom line. Cut them no slack, give them a full stroke of the pump. Let's make this ordinance work for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Larry White, 102 Sylvia's Court. You need to include in this new ordinance the fact that it should not only be the property that's visible from the street. I'm talking specifically residentials. I know of a property right now that the owner there has not been there for over 5 years. It just so happens that he's lucky his one next door neighbor mows his front lawn for him. But if you look in his backyard above his fence, he has a forest back there. And I'll give Troy the information. But you need to have that specifically put into the ordinance. Just because his one neighbor is kind enough to mow his front yard for him doesn't mean that he should get away with it. Thank you.
We can let Troy do the landscaping. I've seen her front yard is beautiful, so she does a great job.
It's my specialty.
Okay. If there's no other comments, we'll go ahead and close this.
I
Okay.
got somebody that, well, about 3 texts a while ago, and people were asking, where was I and how come they couldn't see me? And I told them I didn't think it was intentional, but you see I'm covered up by the flags on the screen.
Maybe that was on purpose.
Well, this is the third meeting they've called me about it, but anyway.
All righty. Thank you. We'll be back at 6 o'clock for our city council meeting.